For the first year since Google started making Pixel phones, I'm not actually picking one up, and I want to let you know why. Today's video is brought to you by NordVPN. They're the VPN of choice for Android users, iOS users, Chromebook users, MacBook, Windows, whatever. They keep your browsing secure and safe when you're on the go or at home. If you'd like to learn more about them and their services, just go over to chromeunbox.com/NordVPN to learn more and get started today. All right, so let's get into this. And if you notice here on the table, there is a Pixel 4. It's not the XL. This is the smaller one with the smaller battery that is getting kind of knocked around on the internet a bit. But overall, I like the aesthetic quality here. I like the idea of a phone made by Google, one that has access to the latest version of Android all the time and is updated quicker than most and does a lot of things, and it's just kind of plugged into all of Google's services right out of the gate. I like all that. Those things are great. It's why I've always owned a Pixel phone. It's why I've always found myself going back to getting a Pixel phone after trying out other phones during the course of every given year. Now, that doesn't discount the things I don't particularly like about this phone. I don't like the fact that they didn't add a wide angle lens. I don't care what they think is more important to whatever type of computational photography they're doing. Wide angle lenses are fun and they're very useful to catch things that you just can't get with software. So it was kind of an odd choice for them to do that. Again, that's not the end of the world. It's still got a great camera in it. It's a Pixel phone. It's going to have a great camera, but other cameras have kind of caught up to them. They've made no strides in video, so we're still stuck with 4K 30, and honestly, the dynamic range when you're doing video doesn't look great. I mean, when you compare it with what we're seeing coming out of the new iPhones, it honestly looks pedestrian, so that's kind of a knock. I don't like the big forehead up top. I don't really like the notch from the 3XL either, and so we kind of go back to, well, what do you do if you're going to put all those sensors in? I don't know. I don't know exactly what the answer is there, but I don't think having a big forehead and a small chin at the bottom is the way to go. I think symmetry looks good for a reason, and kind of wish they would have gone with that and maybe just kept the front-facing speaker there. I don't really know. And when we're talking about the screen, 90 hertz is great, but we're seeing the fact that if it's below 75% brightness, you're only getting 60 hertz, and you can force 90 hertz, but if you do that, you kill the already bad battery life. And so the things are just kind of adding up with this phone that make me go, I'm not sure if I really want it this year. And the reason that we're even making this video is because, again, I've ordered the Pixel phone as soon as I could and eagerly awaited it to show up so I could start using it each year that it's come out. Pixel, Pixel 2, Pixel 3, and Pixel 3a XL. So I've had all of them. I've enjoyed all of them. And yeah, there are nitpicks with every phone, not just Pixel phones. Every phone has shortcomings, and the 4 is going to have shortcomings. And maybe you like the gimmicky things that Google's doing with motion sense and swiping around and being able to take pictures of stars. But for me, those are not things that I'm looking at and going, man, I cannot wait to get my hands on this thing and use it to do those things. But ultimately, what it ended up coming down to for me was this conversation I was actually having with Joe, who's behind the camera right now. He and I were sitting and talking about the Pixel 4 and whether we were going to upgrade. And for the first time, I realized all of a sudden I hadn't even pre-ordered. I hadn't gone through the process of making sure I was going to get one. So I was like, well, crap, if I order now, I'm not going to be late and I'm not going to get it when it releases. And that didn't bother me either. And as we talked it through, it was odd, the mental gymnastics I was going through to make myself want to order a Pixel 4. And let me take you through it real quick. In general, I looked at it and said, well, there's a bunch of hardware stuff I don't really care for about it, but I've done this before. I've gone and gotten a different phone and tried to make it as pixely and googly as I can and not ended up liking it and eventually ending up with a Pixel again. So I just decided, you know what, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm just going to get the Pixel 4 and I'm going to do whatever it is that Google says I can do on my phone, and I'll just live with it. And the minute I started thinking about that, and the minute I started saying to myself, well, maybe next year they'll give us this, or maybe next year we'll get that, I sounded an awful lot like an iPhone user. And I'm not here to bash iPhone users. iPhones do a lot of things really, really well. And I appreciate a lot of what iPhones bring to the market and how they help move smartphones forward. But I remember having a lot of friends who were iPhone users, and each year they would watch the keynote, they'd see the new features, and on some things they'd be like, finally, we got such and such. And oh man, we didn't get this thing we were hoping we were gonna get, maybe next year. Meanwhile, I was watching all that and going, as an Android user, well, if this phone doesn't get what I want and this one does, I'll just use this phone. They all use Android. I have a choice. It's open. I can move around. I can take my cell phone usage to someone else and get what I'm asking for out of a cell phone. And so when I thought about myself kind of taking that approach with the Pixel, just saying, well, I really don't like a lot of what they're doing. I don't kind of like the way the screen looks, and it's a little bit dim, and there are brighter screens out there, better refresh rates, and better looking phones, and better camera assortments, and really good software, and companies that are making phones that get great update cycles, and OnePlus phones that get updates just as quick, if not quicker sometimes, than Pixel phones. Why am I stuck having to accept what it is that Google's doing with their phone? And then I thought about it for a second, realized I don't have to be stuck in that. I'm an Android user. I can go and get any phone I want. And there's something I value greatly about that openness. I value open source software. I value ecosystems that I can move and take with me wherever I want to go. Sure, I'm kind of locked into Google services. I'm a Chromebook user, an Android user. I like Google's services. I like their software. But you know what? If I'm forced to, I can take those services and put them on a Mac, or I can take those services and put them on an iPhone or an iPad or a Windows machine or Linux. I can use them anywhere I want to, so I'm not stuck using a piece of hardware that I don't like just to get the services I need. And that's the difference. iPhones lock you into Apple's hardware and software together. So to get the best of an iPhone, you need to use their hardware and their software together. So sure, you can use Google stuff on an iPhone, but ultimately Apple wants you to use iCloud, and they want you to use Apple's version of basically everything software related only with their hardware, because you can't use their software anywhere else. And so they kind of lock you into this thing where you're like, this is the only phone I get, and whatever they say I will like, this is what I will like. And I just push back against that. That's just my nature. I don't like that. I want to use hardware because I like the hardware, and I like the way it makes me feel when I use it, and I enjoy the entire experience. And so because of that, I'm pushing back a little bit against the Pixel 4 this year, because ultimately Google doesn't offer, from my perspective, the best possible hardware here. Do they have the best camera on an Android phone? Arguably, yeah. They might arguably have the best camera on any phone, but I feel like Apple might have come in and superseded them in some ways in that, and especially with video. I mean, they're miles ahead. So they don't even have the best camera, like they did just a couple years ago, where the Pixel 2 and 3 were so far ahead of everybody else. So now all of a sudden, what is the reason that I would feel tied to the Pixel brand of phones? And honestly, when I started thinking about it, I don't have a lot of reasons. And so for that reason, I chose to go and pick up the OnePlus 7T, because I get Android 10, I get all the latest updates. I get a 90 hertz refresh screen that gets up to 1,000 nits of brightness. It's 3 or 4 inches, so it's plenty large. There's almost no notch whatsoever on it. I get RGB face unlock, but I also get a fingerprint scanner because, oh, by the way, the face unlock that works really well in the Pixel 4 doesn't work with any apps really yet. So all those apps you use your fingerprint to unlock, well, you're back to putting in a password or some sort of PIN or something like that to get into those now, because your face unlock's not going to work on that for a little while. And so as all these things add up, as all these differences and changes in the way that phones are made start piling up, and I started thinking about it, I just decided it was time to move on and kind of unshackle myself from Google's lock-in that they're kind of trying to go about getting with the Pixel phones. I don't know if they'll ever get it, because ultimately Android's open source, everybody can have it. Phone makers like OnePlus can make great phones and great hardware and keep it updated if they choose to, and they're choosing to do that, and I think they're making better hardware. Is the camera better? No, but everything else about this phone is. And that's enough for me right now to walk away from the Pixel line until something else comes out that at least impresses me and inspires me to pick it up and use it again from a hardware perspective. But guys, that's it for this one. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button down below. Make sure to hit the notification bell if you would like to be alerted when we make future videos just like this one. Till next time, we'll see you.